Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominator, watching the stars through the massive viewing window. His gray skin showed the battle scars of 30 years of conquest. The Zeltharian Empire had grown strong under warriors like him. 12 star systems now bowed to their rule, and soon there would be 13. The latest intelligence report glowed on his command screen. A new world had been discovered. The scouts called it Earth, home to a species called humans. According to the data, these creatures had only been sending radio signals for about 100 years. They barely knew how to travel between stars. Perfect targets. "Admiral," said Commander Zethka, his second in command. "The fleet reports ready for departure. 847 ships await your order." Vexatar smiled, showing his sharp teeth. This was the largest war fleet the Zeltharian Empire had ever assembled. 12 massive dreadnoughts led the formation, each one capable of destroying a small moon. Hundreds of cruisers, destroyers, and support ships filled the space around them. It was enough firepower to conquer 10 worlds. The intelligence briefings had made this mission sound almost boring. Humans had primitive weapons, barely functional space travel, and no real military fleet. Their planet showed signs of being divided into many small nations that fought each other more than they cooperated. The Empire's war planners estimated the conquest would take 6 hours at most. "Commander," Vextar said, "transmit the departure order to all ships. We leave for the human system immediately." The massive fleet began moving through space. Each ship carried thousands of Zeltharian warriors ready to claim another world for the Empire. Vextar had done this many times before. The pattern was always the same. Arrive with overwhelming force, demand surrender, land troops, and add another species to the Empire's growing list of servants. As they traveled through hyperspace, Vexatar reviewed what they knew about Earth. The planet sat in an interesting location along several major trade routes. Once conquered, it would become a valuable hub for Empire commerce. The humans themselves seemed typical for a young species, aggressive, divided, and completely unaware of their place in the larger galaxy. The Empire's scientists had studied human broadcasts for months. These creatures spent most of their time fighting each other over resources and territory. They had nuclear weapons, but seemed afraid to use them. Their space technology was laughably primitive compared to Zeltharian engineering. Most amusing of all, many humans still believed they were alone in the universe. "Admiral," reported the navigation officer, "we will arrive at the human system in 6 hours." Vextar nodded. By this time tomorrow, Earth would belong to the Empire. The humans would join the other conquered species as workers and servants. Their planet would provide new resources and a strategic base for future expansion. The hours passed quickly. Vextar spent the time reviewing battle plans, though he doubted they would need them. The Empire had developed efficient methods for dealing with primitive worlds. A show of overwhelming force usually convinced most species to surrender without a fight. Those who resisted learned quickly that the Empire was not merciful to those who opposed them. "Approaching the human system now," announced the navigation officer. "All ships, prepare for standard conquest formation," Vextar commanded. "Weapons to ready status. Begin scanning for human defensive positions." The Zeltharian fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of what humans called the Sol system. 847 ships spread across space like a steel cloud. The sight had broken the spirit of every species that had ever seen it. "Sir, we're detecting human ships," reported the sensor operator. 43 vessels total. They appear to be converted cargo ships and mining equipment." Vextar laughed. 43 ships? Against our fleet? Are they serious? The sensor readings showed exactly what the intelligence reports had predicted. The human fleet was pathetic. Old ships that looked like they had been quickly converted from civilian use. No massive warships, no battle formations, no signs of advanced weapons. It was almost insulting. "Open a communication channel to the human ships," Vextar ordered. "It's time to give them the standard surrender demand." The communication system crackled to life. Vextar's image would now be visible to every human ship in the system. He had given this speech dozens of times to dozens of species. It never got old. "Humans of Earth," his voice boomed across space. "I am Admiral Vextar of the Zeltharian Empire. Your system has been claimed by our empire. You will surrender immediately and prepare for occupation. Resistance is futile. You have 1 hour to respond with your complete surrender." Vextar cut the transmission and waited. Most species took less than 10 minutes to accept the inevitable. A few foolish ones tried to negotiate. None had ever been stupid enough to actually fight back. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Finally, a response came from the human ships. The voice was calm and steady, speaking in their primitive language that the Empire's computers translated automatically. "This is Admiral Chen Nakamura of Earth Defense Command. We have received your demand for surrender. After careful consideration, we decline." The bridge fell silent. Commander Zethka stared at the communication display in disbelief. "Sir, did they just refuse?" Vexatar's smile faded. In 30 years of conquest, no species had ever simply refused. They begged, they negotiated, they tried to buy time, but none had ever just said no. "Perhaps they don't understand," Vextar said slowly. "Open the channel again." "Humans," he said, his voice harder now. "You face the largest fleet in Zeltharian history. 847 ships with enough firepower to destroy your entire planet. This is not a negotiation. Surrender now or we will take your world by force." Again, the calm human voice responded. "Admiral Vextar, we understand your position perfectly. Our answer remains the same. We decline." Vextar stared at the communication display for a long moment. These humans were either the bravest species he had ever encountered or the most foolish. Either way, they had sealed their fate. "Commander," he said quietly, "prepare the fleet for battle. It seems we'll have to teach these humans about the price of defying the Empire." As the massive Zeltharian fleet began moving toward Earth, none of them noticed the strange readings their sensors were picking up throughout the system. What looked like empty space and random debris would soon reveal secrets that would change everything they thought they knew about humanity. Admiral Chen Nakamura closed the communication channel and turned to face the crowded command center buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Every screen in the room showed the massive alien fleet hanging at the edge of their solar system like a dark storm cloud. 847 ships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. "Well, people," Chen said to the room full of officers and scientists, "today's the day we've been preparing for since the Roosevelt administration." The room buzzed with quiet activity. No panic, no shouting, no desperate last-minute planning. These people had been training for this moment their entire careers. Some of their parents had been training for it too. Humanity had been preparing for this war since 1947, when the first radio telescopes detected organized alien signals from deep space. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the head of the SETI Defense Project, pulled up a holographic display of the solar system. Red dots marked the positions of the alien ships. Blue dots showed human positions. To anyone else, it would have looked hopeless. 43 human ships against nearly 900 alien vessels. But the blue dots told only part of the story. "Status report," Chen ordered. "Project Lighthouse is fully operational," reported Colonel James Park from the moon. "All lunar installations are powered up and ready. The surface mining stations have been cleared and our real defenses are coming online." "Asteroid Belt Command reports ready," came another voice from the speakers. "All mining platforms have completed their transition to combat status. We have 312 active weapons platforms online." "Mars Defense Grid is operational," reported General Lisa Wong. Both polar installations and the Olympus Mons facility are at full readiness. Chen nodded. To the aliens, it looked like humanity had barely crawled into space. What they couldn't see was the result of 78 years of the most secret military project in human history. It had started simply enough. Radio astronomers had detected patterns in cosmic radiation that couldn't be natural. Organized signals meant organized intelligence. That meant potential contact with alien civilizations. The world's governments had quietly agreed on a single plan: prepare for the worst, hope for the best, and tell no one. Every space mission since then had carried two purposes: the public mission that everyone knew about, and the secret mission that only a few hundred people on Earth understood. Every satellite launched, every space station built, every mining operation established had been designed with one hidden purpose: defend Earth from alien invasion. The International Space Agency was really the Earth Defense Command. The commercial mining operations in the asteroid belt were actually weapons platforms. The scientific research stations on Mars and the outer planets were military bases. Even the moon had been secretly hollowed out and turned into the largest fortress in human space. "Dr. Martinez," Chen said, "what do our long-range sensors tell us about their capabilities?" "Their ships use standard electromagnetic propulsion," she replied, studying the data streams. "Energy weapons, probably plasma-based. They're big, heavily armed, and built for intimidating primitive civilizations into surrender. But they have weaknesses. Such as? They're designed for quick, overwhelming attacks against unprepared enemies. Their formation is spread out to look impressive, not for actual combat efficiency. And Admiral, they're completely ignoring our asteroid belt. They think it's just rocks and ice." Chen smiled. The aliens had made their first mistake. Humanity's greatest advantage had always been their talent for making weapons out of anything they could find. Rocks and ice made excellent projectiles when accelerated to significant fractions of light speed. "Communications, patch me through to all human vessels," Chen ordered. "This is Admiral Chen to all Earth Defense Force ships. Execute Protocol 7 immediately. Remember your training, trust your equipment, and bring these bastards into our trap." Across the solar system, 43 ships that had been built to look like converted civilian vessels began shedding their disguises. Hidden armor plating slid away to reveal advanced weapon systems. Fake cargo pods opened to reveal missile launchers. Mining ships transformed into sleek warships that had been designed and built in secret facilities on the far side of the moon. But the real surprise wasn't the ships. It was everything else. The asteroid belt had been humanity's greatest project. Over decades, mining operations had gradually hollowed out hundreds of asteroids and filled them with weapons. Rail guns that could accelerate projectiles to incredible speeds. Missile systems that could track targets across millions of kilometers. Power systems that could run for years without maintenance. The outer planets told a similar story. What looked like research stations were actually military bases with enough firepower to level a city. The gas giants themselves had been turned into weapons, with hidden installations that could use their massive gravitational fields to accelerate projectiles. Even the moon, humanity's oldest neighbor, held secrets. The public saw scientific installations and mining operations. Reality was far different. The entire satellite had been converted into a fortress. Its surface was covered with hidden weapons that could pop up anywhere. Its interior was a maze of tunnels, command centers, and manufacturing facilities that could produce ammunition and spare parts for decades. "Sir," reported the tactical officer, "the alien fleet is beginning to advance. They're moving in standard intimidation formation." Chen watched the display as the massive alien fleet began moving deeper into the solar system. They were taking their time, probably expecting humanity to panic and surrender as they got closer. It was a classic tactic for conquering primitive civilizations. "Let them come," Chen said. Remember, everyone, we are not trying to win a fair fight. We are trying to make sure that anyone who threatens Earth understands the price of that decision. The aliens had spent centuries perfecting the art of conquering unprepared civilizations. They had never faced a species that had spent decades preparing for exactly this scenario. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest talent wasn't building spaceships or developing new technologies. Humanity's greatest talent was turning everything around them into weapons. The command center fell silent, except for the quiet hum of computers and the distant rumble of massive machinery coming online throughout the solar system. Every person in the room knew what was about to happen. In a few hours, the solar system would become the largest battlefield in human history. Chen looked at the tactical display one more time. 43 human ships against 847 alien vessels. On paper, it looked hopeless. But Chen wasn't worried about the ships. He was thinking about the thousands of hidden weapons platforms, the booby-trapped asteroids, the militarized planets, and the hollowed-out moon that was about to reveal its true nature. The aliens thought they were attacking a helpless planet. They were actually flying into the largest trap humanity had ever built. The first shot of the war came from what the Zeltharian sensors identified as a small asteroid near Jupiter's orbit. Admiral Vextar was reviewing attack formations when the massive projectile struck his formation's lead destroyer. The ship simply vanished in a ball of superheated metal and expanding gas. "What was that?" Vextar demanded, staring at the tactical display where one of his ships had been moments before. "Unknown, sir," reported the sensor officer, his voice shaking. "The projectile came from an asteroid. But that's impossible." Before anyone could respond, dozens more projectiles burst from the asteroid belt. Chunks of rock and metal accelerated to incredible speeds, smashed into the Zeltharian formation. Ships that had conquered entire worlds died in seconds, their armor useless against the massive kinetic impacts. "Evasive maneuvers!" Vextar shouted. "All ships, scatter and prepare for combat!" But there was nowhere to run. The human trap had been 78 years in the making, and every piece of debris in the solar system was now revealing its true nature. Asteroids split open to expose massive railguns. Dead comets ignited hidden engines and began ramming attacks. Even tiny pieces of space junk suddenly showed up on sensors as guided missiles. The human ships that had looked so pathetic were transforming before the aliens' eyes. False hulls fell away to reveal sleek warships armed with weapons the Zeltharians had never seen before. These ships didn't fight like any military the Empire had ever encountered. Instead of trying to match the alien fleet in traditional combat, they used hit-and-run tactics, appearing from behind asteroids and disappearing into the debris field. "Sir, we're taking heavy casualties," Commander Zethka reported as another explosion lit up the bridge displays. "The humans have turned their entire star system into a weapons platform." Vexatar watched in growing horror as his mighty fleet fell apart around him. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were fighting with a level of preparation and ruthlessness that shocked him. These creatures had spent decades turning every piece of matter in their solar system into a potential weapon. A human destroyer smaller than a Zeltharian cruiser suddenly appeared from behind Europa. But instead of engaging in normal combat, it accelerated directly toward one of the Empire's dreadnoughts. Vextar watched in disbelief as the human ship smashed into the much larger vessel at incredible speed. Both ships died in the collision, but the human captain had deliberately sacrificed his ship and crew to destroy a target worth 10 times their value. "They're ramming us," Zethka said, his voice filled with shock. "The humans are using suicide attacks." This was beyond anything in Zeltharian military doctrine. Civilized species fought to win battles and minimize losses. They didn't throw away ships and lives in desperate kamikaze attacks. But the humans seemed to view their own deaths as acceptable casualties if they could inflict greater damage on the enemy. The pattern repeated across the battlefield. Human ships would appear, launch devastating attacks, and then ram nearby alien vessels if they couldn't escape. It was insane, primitive, and terrifyingly effective. "Admiral," came a panicked voice from the communications officer, "we're receiving surrender demands from the humans." Surrender demands? Vextar couldn't believe what he was hearing. From them? The same calm voice from earlier echoed across the bridge. "Admiral Vextar, this is Admiral Chen Nakamura. You are now experiencing Earth's defensive capabilities. If you order an immediate retreat from our solar system, we will allow your surviving ships to leave unharmed. If you continue this attack, we will destroy your entire fleet." Vextar looked at his tactical display. In less than 2 hours of combat, he had lost over 300 ships. The humans had revealed weapons systems hidden throughout their solar system, and they were using tactics that no civilized military would ever consider. "Sir," reported the tactical officer, "their moon is opening up." On the main screen, Earth's satellite was transforming before their eyes. What had looked like a barren rock was revealing itself as the largest military installation the Empire had ever encountered. Hidden doors were sliding open across its surface, and massive weapons were rising from concealed positions. The moon fired its first salvo. Hundreds of missiles launched simultaneously, followed by energy beams that reached across space to slice through Zeltharian ships like a hot knife through ice. The satellite that the Empire's intelligence had dismissed as unimportant was actually a fortress that could threaten their entire fleet. "This is impossible," Vextar whispered. "How long have they been preparing for this?" His question was answered when more hidden installations revealed themselves throughout the solar system. Mars opened weapon ports at both poles. The gas giants revealed military bases hidden in their radiation belts. Even tiny moons and planetoids showed signs of human military engineering. The humans had done something no species in galactic history had ever attempted. Instead of building a fleet to project power across space, they had turned their entire star system into one massive fortress. Every rock, every piece of ice, every moon and planet had been converted into a weapon aimed at anyone who dared threaten their home. "Admiral, we need to retreat," Zethka said urgently. "We've lost half the fleet, and they're still revealing new weapons." But Vextar was trapped by his own success. The Zeltharian Empire had built its reputation on never backing down, never retreating, never accepting defeat. If word spread that a primitive species had forced the Empire's greatest fleet to run away, it would encourage rebellion across all their conquered worlds. "No retreat," he ordered. "Signal all remaining ships. Full assault on the human homeworld. If we can destroy their planet, we can still claim victory." It was the worst decision he could have made. The humans had been holding back, hoping the aliens would see reason and withdraw. Now they realized the invaders would not stop until Earth was destroyed. Admiral Chen's voice came across the communication system one final time, and this time it carried no offer of mercy. "Admiral Vextar, you have made your choice. Earth Defense Command is now authorized to use unrestricted warfare protocols. Every human installation in this system is hereby ordered to fire at will with all available weapons. Show these invaders what happens when someone threatens our home." The solar system erupted in fire. Weapons that had been hidden for decades revealed themselves and opened fire. The asteroid belt became a storm of metal and death. The outer planets launched attacks that crossed millions of kilometers to find their targets. Earth's moon, fully revealed as a fortress, began firing continuously with enough energy output to power a small star. And through it all, the human ships continued their insane tactics. Ramming, hit-and-run attacks, suicide missions that traded one human ship for 3 or 4 alien vessels. They fought like cornered animals, except they had spent 78 years preparing their corner. Vexatar realized with growing terror that the humans had never intended to win a traditional battle. They had prepared to turn first contact into a massacre, and now he and his fleet were trapped in the killing ground they had built. 18 hours after the battle began, Admiral Vextar finally accepted what his tactical officers had been telling him for the past 6 hours. The Zeltharian Empire's greatest fleet was dying. The Dominator's bridge was a disaster. Half the control stations were dead, smoke filled the air, and the ship's hull groaned under the stress of constant impacts. Through the cracked viewing window, Vextar could see the remains of his once mighty armada scattered across space like broken toys. "Casualty report," he demanded, though he already knew the answer would be devastating. Commander Zethka, blood running down his face from a head wound, consulted his damaged display. "Sir, we've lost 816 ships. Only 31 vessels remain in fighting condition, and most of those are heavily damaged. 816 ships destroyed. Out of the largest fleet in Zeltharian history, only 31 survived. The humans had done more than defeat them. They had committed genocide against the Empire's finest warriors. The battle had turned into a nightmare that violated everything the Empire understood about warfare. The humans didn't just fight to win territory or resources. They fought to completely destroy anyone who threatened their home. Every tactic they used was designed not just to defeat the enemy, but to make sure that enemy could never threaten Earth again. Their weapons were built for total destruction. Where Zeltharian energy beams were designed to disable enemy ships for capture, human weapons were designed to vaporize targets completely. Where the Empire's missiles carried warheads meant to force surrender, human missiles carried enough explosive power to crack a ship in half. Most disturbing of all was their willingness to sacrifice themselves. In 18 hours of combat, Vextar had watched dozens of human ships deliberately ram his vessels. These weren't desperate last stands or moments of panic. They were calculated tactics carried out by crews who had apparently been trained to view their own deaths as acceptable prices for destroying the enemy. "Sir," reported the navigation officer, "the humans are beginning to pursue our remaining ships. They're not letting us retreat." This was the final violation of civilized warfare. When an enemy was clearly defeated, the victorious side was supposed to allow survivors to withdraw. It was how wars ended without total annihilation. But the humans seemed determined to hunt down every remaining Zeltharian ship. "All ships," Vextar transmitted to his surviving fleet, "emergency withdrawal to the jump point. Maximum speed. Ignore formation protocols." The 31 remaining ships of his once proud armada began a desperate race for the edge of the solar system. But the humans weren't finished with them. Ships that had been hiding in the outer planets emerged to harass the retreating fleet. Weapons platforms that hadn't revealed themselves during the main battle suddenly came alive to fire on the escaping aliens. The humans had positioned defensive installations throughout their entire solar system. There was no safe route to escape. Every asteroid, every moon, every piece of space debris could potentially hide another weapon ready to strike at the fleeing Zeltharians. "They turned everything into a weapon," Zethka said quietly, as another explosion lit up the darkness behind them. "Their entire star system is one massive fortress." Vexatar nodded grimly. The Empire's intelligence services had completely failed to understand what they were facing. The humans hadn't built a space fleet because they didn't need one. They had turned their home system into the most heavily defended location in known space. The running battle continued for 3 days. Human ships appeared from hiding places throughout the solar system to attack the retreating fleet. They used the same insane tactics that had worked so well in the main battle: suicide runs, ramming attacks, and weapons that prioritized destruction over capture. By the end of the first day, only 22 Zeltharian ships remained. By the end of the second day, the number had dropped to 15. The humans pursued them like hunters tracking wounded animals, picking off stragglers and damaged vessels with methodical precision. "Sir, "The humans are broadcasting another message," reported the communications officer. Admiral Chen's voice filled the bridge one final time. "Admiral Vexitar, you now understand the price of threatening Earth. We are allowing some of your ships to escape so you can carry a message back to your empire. Tell them what happened here. Tell them what you found when you tried to conquer humanity, and tell them that Earth will remember this attack." The message cut off, but its meaning was clear. The humans weren't letting survivors escape out of mercy. They were deliberately allowing witnesses to survive so they could spread the word about what had happened in the Sol system. "They want us to run away," Vextar realized. "They want the galaxy to know that the mighty Zeltharian Empire was crushed by a species that hasn't even left their home system." It was a brilliant strategy that demonstrated the same long-term thinking the humans had shown in preparing their defenses. They understood that completely destroying the Zeltharian fleet would only invite investigation and possible revenge attacks. But letting a few survivors escape with tales of humanity's defensive capabilities would keep other potential invaders away. On the third day of their retreat, Vexitar's fleet finally reached the edge of the solar system where they could activate their hyperspace drives. Of the 847 ships that had entered the system with such confidence, only 9 remained operational enough to make the journey home. "Sir," said the navigation officer, "we're ready to jump to hyperspace." Vextar took one last look at the tactical display showing the human solar system. Even now, as his defeated fleet prepared to flee, he could see new weapons installations revealing themselves throughout the system. The humans had apparently been hiding even more defensive capabilities than they had used during the battle. How long had they been preparing for this? How many resources had they devoted to turning their home into this fortress? And most importantly, what else were they capable of? "Execute jump," he ordered. As the 9 surviving ships fled into hyperspace, Vextar began composing the report he would have to give to the Zeltharian High Command. How could he explain that the Empire's greatest fleet had been destroyed by a species they had dismissed as primitive? How could he make them understand that humanity wasn't just another conquest target, but something entirely different? The humans had shown the galaxy something new and terrifying. They had proven that a species didn't need to conquer other worlds to become powerful. They just needed to be willing to turn everything they had into weapons for defending their home. And from what Vextar had seen in the Sol system, humanity had a lot more weapons than anyone had imagined. The 9 surviving ships of the Zeltharian Empire's greatest fleet limped into their home system 3 weeks after fleeing the Sol system. The Dominator, Admiral Vextar's flagship, looked like it had been chewed up and spit out by some massive monster. Huge sections of its hull were missing, its weapon systems were completely destroyed, and half its crew was dead. News of the fleet's return spread quickly through the Zeltharian capital. Citizens gathered at spaceports and communication centers, expecting to hear of another glorious victory for the Empire. Instead, they watched in stunned silence as the broken remnants of their proudest military force struggled to reach orbital docking stations. High Admiral Kesava, Supreme Commander of all Zeltharian forces, waited in the main briefing chamber as Vextar was brought in on a medical stretcher. The wounded Admiral's report would determine how the Empire responded to this unprecedented disaster. 816 ships destroyed, Vextar began, his voice hoarse from smoke inhalation and exhaustion. "The humans didn't just defeat us, High Admiral. They slaughtered us." The chamber fell silent. No one in Zeltharian history had ever reported losses like this. The Empire had conquered 12 star systems without losing more than a dozen ships in any single battle. Now they had lost an entire fleet to a species that supposedly barely knew how to travel between planets. "Explain how this is possible," Kesava demanded. "Our intelligence indicated these humans were primitive, divided, and completely unprepared for galactic contact." Vextar's laugh was bitter and full of pain. Our intelligence was wrong about everything. The humans have been preparing for this war for decades. They turned their entire star system into a fortress designed specifically to destroy anyone who tried to conquer their world. Over the next several hours, Vextar provided a detailed account of the battle. He described weapons hidden in asteroids, military bases disguised as research stations, and a moon that had been completely hollowed out and converted into the largest fortress anyone had ever seen. He talked about human ships that had been built to look primitive but carried advanced weapon systems. Most disturbing of all, he described human tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare. "They fight like cornered animals," he concluded, "but they're not cornered. They've been planning this for longer than most of our officers have been alive. Every piece of debris in their system is a potential weapon. Every moon and planet has hidden military installations. And they're willing to sacrifice anything to protect their homeworld." The implications of Vextar's report sent shockwaves through the Zeltharian government. If the humans could destroy the Empire's greatest fleet, what did that mean for the Empire's future expansion plans? What did it mean for their control over the worlds they had already conquered? Within hours, encrypted messages were flying across galactic communication networks. The news was too big to keep secret. Every major civilization in the galaxy learned that the mighty Zeltharian Empire had been crushed by a species no one had considered a threat. The Galactic Council, a loose organization of the major spacefaring civilizations, called an emergency session. Representatives from dozens of worlds gathered to discuss the implications of what had happened in the Sol system. Ambassador Trendar of the peaceful Valdris Confederation stood before the assembled delegates. "Fellow beings, we face an unprecedented situation. A species we knew nothing about has demonstrated the ability to inflict devastating casualties on a major military power. The question before us is simple. What do we do about humanity?" The debate that followed would reshape galactic politics for generations. Some delegates argued for immediate military action against Earth before the humans could expand beyond their system. Others suggested diplomatic contact to negotiate treaties and trade agreements. A few recommended that everyone simply avoid the Sol system entirely until they understood humanity's intentions better. But the more the Council learned about the battle, the more complicated the situation became. The humans had demonstrated capabilities that challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare and defense. Their willingness to turn their entire star system into a weapons platform suggested a level of dedication to defending their home that was both admirable and terrifying. "They don't fight for conquest," observed Ambassador Velthara of the advanced Zephyrian Republic. "According to the Zeltharian survivors, the humans never tried to pursue the attack beyond their own system. They fight purely for defense. This makes them unpredictable by our normal political calculations." The Council's military analysts provided even more disturbing news. Earth sat along several major trade routes that connected different regions of the galaxy. If humanity decided to expand beyond their system and control those routes, they could disrupt galactic commerce. But any attempt to remove them by force would apparently cost thousands of ships and millions of lives. Meanwhile, in the Sol system, Admiral Chen Nakamura was dealing with the aftermath of humanity's first galactic war. The solar system's defensive installations had worked perfectly, but the cost had been significant. 28 human ships had been destroyed, along with their crews. Several defensive platforms had been damaged or destroyed, and now Earth had to decide what came next. "Sir," reported Dr. Martinez, "we're detecting massive increases in galactic communication traffic. Everyone knows about the battle now." Chen nodded. They had expected this. The point of letting some Zeltharian ships escape had been to spread the word about Earth's defensive capabilities. Now the galaxy knew that humanity was not an easy target. "Any signs of additional threats?" Chen asked. "Negative, sir. In fact, we're starting to receive what appear to be diplomatic signals from several civilizations. They seem interested in establishing peaceful contact. Chen smiled. The strategy had worked. By demonstrating overwhelming defensive capabilities, humanity had positioned itself as a power that other civilizations would prefer to negotiate with rather than fight. But the most significant change was happening in the deepest classified areas of Earth's government. For 78 years, humanity had focused all its military efforts on defending the Sol system. Now, with the threat of immediate invasion apparently reduced, it was time to consider other possibilities. Deep in the hidden shipyards on the far side of the moon, construction crews were already beginning work on a new type of vessel. These wouldn't be defensive platforms or system patrol ships. These would be humanity's first true interstellar warships, designed to project power far beyond the Sol system. The galaxy had tried to conquer Earth and failed catastrophically. Now it was about to discover what happened when humanity decided to expand beyond their fortress system. The species that had turned first contact into a massacre was preparing to introduce themselves to their neighbors properly. In hidden bases throughout the outer solar system, human ships that had been concealed for decades began receiving new orders. The time for hiding and defensive preparation was over. Humanity was ready to take its place in galactic civilization, and they were going to do it on their own terms. The message Admiral Chen had asked the surviving Zeltharians to carry home was simple. Earth would remember this attack. But the galaxy was about to learn that humanity never forgot anything. And now they knew exactly where to find the civilizations that had sent warships to conquer their home. The age of humanity hiding in the Sol system was ending. The age of humanity among the stars was about to begin.